how did you get the idea of this movie, and how did it evolve?
Well, thank you very much. But for our first feature in France, and doing as we knew, we were gonna make it like guerrilla style and no crew, which means no money at the moment we were shooting in, even no production company. And we were searching for a hero. Of course, we knew it's gonna be quite hard on the. Um, so so we the hero was there. It was one of our brother. He was living in France, but the fact is that at the moment he was living there, it was quite hard because it was a time when in 2007, 2008, when people who had no papers were quite chasing by police, and so this is how the idea of the movie started.
Well, necessity is the mother of invention, so I guess that would be the right thing to say in this case. And another idea comes to my mind, and then I will let the audience ask the question. Looking at your movie, which is kind of almost borderline documentary, it's not, but if it has that kind of feel to it, I would ask how much of it was actually scripted, like really tightly scripted, and how much of it was kind of loosely, let's go along and pick up along the way.
Well, I guess a very big part of the movie wasn't scripted, because basically when you do that kind of stuff, you write things and then you know it's going to be very hard to do. So you find another solution, another way to tell it. So this is it. Basically, it was just about telling something, and at least talking about reality through the processes of shooting. So that's was it. It was just a try, basically, in a way, and you tried to reach something, and that was it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to make the connection between the other shorts we saw, because obviously this is about immigration, and obviously Green Card is talking about that and what it means for us to be living somewhere else. We will live somewhere else. That somewhere else in Green Card happens to be the United States, and the aspiration to go and live in the United States. And in contrast to that, lifelong is also living somewhere else and not being able to live in that somewhere else, because we are used to something that is structured and ready-made and all that, and after 40 years in the same place, suddenly how does one adapt to a new environment? Maybe before we go further, let me just pass the mic from one to the next, and then you can introduce yourselves.
I'm David Whitmer. I worked on the sound and co-directed with Pilar Rico.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Kormanova. I'm one of the producers of that film that you just saw on the.
Well, he introduced me already. Yes, Pilar.
Okay, Nicolas?
Yeah, I'm with Mohammad.
Do you want to?
Oh.
Yeah.
Mohammad, I wanted to introduce Mohammad.
Yes, please, Mohammad. Where is he?
Sitting there with his wife.
Oh, there you go.
There's enough chairs, Mohammad. Come on.
So that was very courageous also to actually go out and tell your story. So how did you two meet? How did the story and how telling it, how did it come about?
Maybe they should talk about that.
Yeah.
I had an interest in recording music from around the world, different types of music, and traveling and doing that quite a bit. And I hadn't been able to do that in quite a while, and I was getting a little restless. I live in New York City, plenty of music here in New York City, and actually just went around to the delis in my neighborhood, which I knew were owned by Bangladeshis. I said, oh, maybe there's a musician here and there. And sure enough, I met one. And he was extremely accommodating, a hugely generous, gracious individual who said, yeah, let's do this. And so we did it. Yeah. That's.
You want to say something about your film?
Yeah, sure. So the idea of the short actually started from a script which was written by Liv, the director, for a feature movie. So it was a bit challenge to develop it into a short one. Because as you saw, it's really linear actually. There is not like a really definite climax or some conflict in the narrative. So, yeah.
I have a question about the music, and because so now this green card song, is it a hit in Bangladesh? Tell us about that.
Thank you very much. I am Mohammad Rahmad, known as Super Mama. I'm a lyricist and author, and I write songs about people's problems. So I had my green card from the beginning, but a lot of co-workers I saw they don't have green card crying for the family, so that made me to write this song. And actually I wanted to send a message to the US government, but I did not know it's going to be very, very easy through a film. So thank you very much for giving me a chance to speak here. Thank you very much.
Has the president seen this movie?
We'll try to take it to the president.
We should have invited him tonight, or the immigration officers or whoever.
Yeah, with your help, we'll try to take it to the president.
Yeah, because I mean, for me, immigration is such a fascinating topic because everybody comes from somewhere, and it's like where you are and what you're aspiring for or at, and then there are all the conflicts or the impediment or the obstacles in the way, and you have to override them and become very creative, and then suddenly you realize, wait a minute, I've wasted half my life trying to get my papers. Was it really worth it?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think it's worth it?
Actually, I said I had the green card, so I didn't have the problem. So I felt people's sadness or waiting for their family. That's made me to write the novel.
Pilar? Do you want to say something about
I don't know, I guess like the other idea that we had, because at the beginning we met him and we thought we were gonna tell a story. We were not sure what the story was, so one of the first things we did was the recording of the song, and then we thought, oh wait, he's so interesting, like we didn't want to tell his story.
About him, yeah.
So it was more about him, and he was recording like 2 albums because now he's in the Bangladeshi music community, at least in New York, he's kind of like well known. So we were trying to follow that story, but then eventually we realized, I don't know, something wasn't working, and then we said, it's green card, like the story that we want to tell, and with that, the story of that song, we can tell his story.
Right.
And yeah, the idea was a little bit to also get closer to the idea that immigrants in our community can also bring something up, they can bring some richness to our culturally. And music is always like such a good way to approach people, even though we might not be.
Right. Which brings us to the character of Zola in We Will Live Somewhere Else, who, when the judge tells him, do you want to add something, suddenly he recites backwards the entire French literature and cites things that probably the judge herself doesn't even know, or I doubt, but that was a very interesting touch. So can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, it's true. It's always the idea that you gotta fight for the idea that many people have a wrong idea for what is it to be an immigrant, all right? What is it to be somebody who can walk from a place to another, all right? Is the idea that now in this world, merchandising, any kind of product can go anywhere on the earth, while the human being, it can be extremely complex, to go from a place to another. So we come back to something that is extremely simple. This is it. Just going from a place to another. All right, it can be extremely problematic, and this is it.
It can be extremely problematic because some people have decided that they need to control this movement. Otherwise, if we look at it from the purely human and cultural exchange point of view, it could be an extremely enriching experience for all parties concerned. Let's see if anybody from the audience is dying to ask a question. Yes, Morgan.
Yeah, I want to ask Nicholas about the shooting of it, because I'm very haunted by it. It's sort of like, I've been on a lot of demonstrations and things like that where there's live streaming and that kind of raw, and I thought that was an incredible haunting feel for the film. So how did you shoot it?
Yeah, raw. Raw is the word, because basically there was no sound engineering
Yeah, no.
and no DOP.
Yep.
So and no script also.
Existing lighting, right?
But there is a film, so
there
that's
was
interesting.
almost nothing, and no production company at the moment we shot it.
Yeah.
So there was nothing basically. But the strong idea that if you want to talk about something, then creation is also about struggle. You fight for something you believe in, and it's true. And when you take something, it's what you want to say, what you gotta say, and anyway, just try to say it. There was a very strong political lie in France at the moment we shot it, and we felt like, oh, let's do it. Let's say what we believe in. Also, we want to talk about our brothers, or our brothers. The way they live in France can be extremely tough and hard, and it's really tough stuff. But they're brothers, or but in the same time, there's a political lie about the way they live and so on. So we have to give our point of view and stuff, our point of view on reality. And this is it.
Other questions? I have a question. Why was there, I mean, I can think why it should be like that so that you're not necessarily distinguishing, but was it a necessity, or did it also come by accidentally, the fact of not designating a particular African country, but leaving it open, like it could be anywhere?
Maybe it was important to work on a symbolic point of view.
Keep the poetic and symbolic elements.
Yes.
There was a lot of poetry in the piece, because although it's talking about such a very important and grassroots and everyday life problem, the treatment of it was so poetic. And all of the films tonight, I don't know, I'm sure everybody agrees with me, the prison story, the Bangladesh, I mean, it's like there was a lot of poetry going through all the films for tonight.
Many people from talk to me about that. They say, yeah, why did you decide to create a character who acts, who becomes violent and so on? In France, we say le cinéma n'a pas à être moral. I don't really know how to translate.
Well, cinema doesn't have to preach, or doesn't have to have a moralistic standpoint.
It's very interesting because it's another stuff, because we had as a partners in Paris a woman who was taking care of you say les couples mixtes.
Mixed marriages or mixed couples.
And she was having some. She was very involved in that stuff, and she was protecting Africans, women or men, whatever, having a marriage with French women or men, and she said it's the very beginning. When you finish a movie, it's very funny, because this is the moment where I start to work, because I have to protect them. I have to protect them to the French government, because the French government is going to make their life extremely crazy at that moment. So it was very interesting. And she said it's the very beginning of a new adventure at this moment, where I have to protect them, and it's going to take years, so that the government really believes in their marriage.
Yes, one more question.
Is that why you had day one on that title sequence?
So
you said, like, you had the day one, day 9 on the boat, and then you have day one when she starts to meet the woman. Is that why you had that then, or why exactly did you choose that title at that point?
Yeah, it was
and
just
then not extend it.
Yeah, it was just to say that sometimes in just one day everything can change in your lives, and there was a very special political moment in France when the government said we want between 25 and 30,000 people to be comment on dit, rejetés en dehors du pays.
Yeah, expulsion.
Well, and this is what they say. Well, yeah, I want to expose 30,000 people out of the country, which is extremely costly, or it costs a lot of money and so on. So we had to give some kind of answer to that stuff. So
and it's also, if I can make a comment on that, when they make this type of decision, it's not the individual lives that are taken into consideration. It's a statistic.
yeah,
It's like 30,000. We need to clear 30,000 place.
Which is
Quota, yeah.
of course,
And
total
who
nonsense.
cares what these people are and what their lives are? Are they mixed marriages in between? Do they have affiliations? Are they educated people? Who are they? Doesn't matter. 30. We need 30,000. Okay, you. Okay,
You
get out.
You leave the country, and this is it. So we wanted. I feel like let's give an answer to that. So that's violence, because it is really.
And the
really
racial profiling too, if I can say something about that. I mean, we think, oh, Paris, city of the lights, and the metro, and how beautiful. It goes on all the time. That racial profiling happens, and Arabs, dark people, black people, they are stopped and searched, and identity cards are asked all the time. Whereas if you're French or European looking, then you might just pass by. So,
That
right,
makes sense
like here,
yeah.
exactly.